Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the American Ferret Association's inaugural webinar, which focuses on everyone's favorite subject, nutrition. I'm your MC, Dawn Carter, and it is my pleasure to be here tonight to moderate and present at this event, which features several of our esteemed colleagues here in the AFA and their collective wisdom. Ferrets got to eat, and we know there is a lot of information out there about what is best for our precious fur babies. Understanding ferret nutrition is essential for any ferret owner because it is the primary factor in ensuring a long, healthy, and happy life. It's not just about what to feed our precious fur babies, but also about when to feed them and what about their unique physiology makes them susceptible to specific diet-related health issues. We also know that there is great diversity of opinion about ferret nutrition. Now, the diversity of perspectives, on what constitutes a natural diet for a domesticated animal vary, and it's pretty significant, and it stems from a combination of scientific understanding, historical feeding practices, and of course, veterinary knowledge. So we have a lot of different philosophical beliefs about what constitutes that natural diet, but all perspectives agree on the core nutritional requirements of ferrets, but they differ on the best practical method to achieve them. Now, deciding what to feed a ferret is a major responsibility and requires a thoughtful approach. Now, given the diversity of perspectives, the best decision for a ferret owner is not about choosing one right way, but rather about weighing the pros and cons of each option against their own circumstances, values, and the specific needs of their pet. Now, hopefully after tonight, whether you're new to ferret ownership or a seasoned veteran, you'll come away with the knowledge you need to consistently and safely provide a diet that meets your ferret's core nutritional needs and keeps them happy and healthy. The key is to be educated, realistic about your capabilities, and to work closely with a trusted veterinarian. Now, we have a lot of great content for you this evening, and we want to make this interactive, so we'll have some opportunities for engagement as well as Q&A at the end. Now, a bit of housekeeping before we start. Participant lines will be muted, although we want to encourage questions to be dropped into the Q&A for the Q&A at the end, and this session will be recorded and posted on the website. Now, we realize that there are a variety of perspectives on this topic, and we want to keep the discourse respectful. And if we happen to not get to a question because we run out of time or we need to do some additional research, rest assured we will follow up with you. Also, if you are having technical difficulties, drop a note in the chat and someone, maybe even Simon, will be available to help you. Bear with us though, since this is our inaugural event. So let's get started. So I promised you some interactive activities. So grab your smartphone, pull up the camera, and snap the QR code or click on the website in the bottom left to tell us what you feed your fuzzbutts. Try to be specific if you feed a kibble with the brand, and if you feed a kibble mix, maybe type kibble mix followed by the brands. For example, I feed a kibble mix plus soupy, so I'd type kibble mix, origin, supreme, Ysong plus soupy. This will give us a nice illustration of the diversity I mentioned in the introduction. So I'll leave this up here for just a minute so that you can participate, and then I will advance to the next slide where we'll see the results. Hopefully everybody's got their smartphones out. I'm seeing that we've got 41 folks, which is very exciting. So we should have a nice representation of what we all feed. And the link is at the bottom left. All right, so let's see what we come up with here. And my technical guru might want to weigh in here to see what needs to be done for the word cloud to show. All right, well, we will move on to the next slide because we want to have a really great ferret nutrition overview for you. So we want to do a quick poll using the raise hand button at the top of your screen, and lower your hands when prompted. So raise your hand if you feed kibble. Okay, we've got a good number of folks, 13, 14, 15. Okay. Now use the button to lower your hands if you would. All right. Now raise your hand if you feed raw. See how many raw folks we have. All right, see 5, 6, 7. Okay. About 7 folks, maybe 8. We've got 8 folks. Okay. Now you can lower your hands. Now let's start with some of the foundational principles of ferret nutrition. And we're going to start by defining what are obligate carnivores. So ferrets are biologically hardwired to eat meat. Their digestive systems are short and they're very short and simple and optimized for rapid transmission of food and absorption of animal proteins and fat. They cannot digest plant matter, fiber, or carbohydrates effectively, and these can actually contribute to serious conditions like insulinoma, inflammatory bowel disease, and bladder stones. Due to their fast metabolism, ferrets require frequent meals, and food should be available at all times, regardless of the diet type, unless your veterinarian advises you to do otherwise. Now, there is a fascinating evolutionary context for obligate carnivores, such as ferrets. Ferrets are descended from European polecats, part of the Mustelidae family, which is one of the oldest, most carnivorous mammalian groups. Over 40 million years, they evolved a number of characteristics that influence their modern nutritional needs, such as that 3 to 4 hour GI transit time. So this means they must eat often due to that fast time. They have sharp shearing teeth and a vertical up and down jaw motion, which is ideal for slicing meat, but useless for grinding plants. Also, they have a complete reliance on prey for essential nutrients like taurine, vitamin A, and arachidonic acid. Now, these adaptations make plant-based diets biologically incompatible with our ferret friends. Therefore, their nutritional needs aren't a lifestyle choice and what is convenient for the owner. They're a survival imperative shaped by evolutionary specialization. So knowing this, let's now define the basic macronutrient targets for suitable ferret food. Now, ferrets thrive on a very high percentage of animal-based protein, as high of a percentage as possible. They also need a high percentage of fat, somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 30%, and a low fiber content. Ferrets derive energy and maintain their blood glucose through protein and fat metabolism and not carbohydrates. Diets lacking in sufficient animal protein can trigger muscle breakdown for energy, leading to dangerous metabolic stress. Let's now turn our attention to choosing what to feed our ferrets. So let's begin at the beginning by starting smart and preventing food imprinting in ferrets. And there we have a little baby Kai, so we can talk about what happens from the time they're babies. Now, ferret kits, like Kai, imprint on their food during the first year of life. And so it's advisable to feed them a mix of kibble and raw meat so they become accustomed to different flavors. And they should be introduced to a variety of foods early, very early actually, because they imprint on their food during that first year and they form a strong attachment to it. And if they're exposed to only one type, they may become picky eaters, which poses serious challenges if their food is discontinued or if they require a special diet when they are ill. Fussy eaters can be particularly challenging to manage, especially when they are sick. A ferret that only accepts one food may reject critical nutrition if that food causes GI upset or lacks recovery supporting nutrients. Early exposure to diverse textures and flavors makes dietary transitions easier when necessary for health reasons. Now, as a proactive strategy to counter the challenges of imprinting, consider a hybrid diet strategy. Now, what that means is you can rotate high-quality kibbles by mixing 2 to 3 high-quality free-fed brands, which broadens the nutrient profile and enhances taste familiarity. You can offer raw or cooked meat. Small portions of plain chicken, beef, or meat-based baby food with no fillers, aligns with their natural diet. You could also introduce soupy by blending kibble with warm water or broth into a paste. Commercial and privately produced dehydrated mixes are also available for soupies. Though not ideal for daily feeding, largely due to lack of the dental benefits provided by crunching on hard kibble, soupy is essential during illness, weakness, or dental issues. It can be given by a spoon or syringe to maintain hydration and nutrient intake. Familiarizing ferrets with soupy early ensures that they accept it when it's most needed, and it will not seem like a foreign, scary food when they are at their most vulnerable. On the next slide, we're going to talk a little more in depth about soupies. By diversifying their diet from the start, from the time they're kits, you're not just feeding your ferret, you're building resilience and preparing for health challenges with foresight and care. So soupy, we have many recipes, many formulations, but it is a critical tool for ferret health. It's a versatile, nutrient-dense, and easily digestible food option, especially vital for ferrets who are ill, recovering from surgery, or they're too old to eat solids. Its components each serve a specific purpose, so let's review those now. So first we have kibble soaked in water, which we mentioned previously, the most basic and fundamental ingredient for the reasons we talked about earlier. This softens their regular food for easier consumption and hydration, gives them hydration while maintaining nutrient balance with a familiar taste. Second, some meat-based baby food perhaps. Adds flavor and smooth texture to entice those picky eaters. It must be pure meat, such as chicken or turkey, with no plant-based fillers so as not to cause digestive upset. Third, you could have some oils, such as salmon oil or other fish oils. This boosts calories and provides essential fatty acids, which also supports their skin and coat health. It can also help stimulate their appetite, which is ideal for low-volume feeding during illness. Also, we'll mention Carnivore Care by Oxbow, which is kind of the gold standard for recovery feeding. This is a complete high-calorie, low-volume recovery formula made from digestible egg and chicken proteins. Being high-calorie and low-volume are its most important features, since sick ferrets might only be able to eat small amounts, and its nutrition means that even a tiny portion can go a long way in providing the energy needed for recovery. Carnivore Care is a powder, easy to mix, and store in the freezer for up to a week once opened, making it essential for emergency feeding and for a ferret-specific first aid kit. Now, in summary, soupy really isn't just a treat, it's a life-saving tool. Familiarizing ferrets with it early ensures they'll accept it when sick. Keeping ingredients like Carnivore Care on hand allows you to deliver hydration, calories, and critical nutrients when your ferret needs them the most, significantly improving their chances of recovery. And now we have hopefully you can hear the soupy noises. Everybody loves the soupy slurping noises. A fun fact about our beloved companions is that they have been domesticated for over 2,500 years, and that the ancient Greeks and Romans used them for hunting and pest control long before they became pets. It's too bad. Those ancient peoples would have appreciated the soupy slurping noises. Now, during the Middle Ages, ferrets were widely used across Europe to hunt rats, mice, and rabbits, especially in barns, ships, and food storage areas. Their musky scent alone could drive rodents away. They were so effective that professional ferret meisters traveled from farm to farm offering pest control services. I know it would have been cool to have a job called a ferret meister. That would have been awesome. By the 16th century, ferrets had become fashionable among European nobility. They were featured in portraits, kept in ornate cages, and used in hunting expeditions. Their agility and charm made them both practical and prestigious companions. Ferrets were introduced to the U.S. in the 18th century, primarily for pest control on ships and farms. Their popularity grew rapidly, and they were soon imported in large numbers for their utility and appeal. So from ancient rabbit hunters to aristocratic pets to modern-day companions, ferrets have played many roles in human history. Their journey reflects not just domestication, but a deep adaptive partnership with people across cultures and eras. All right, so now we're going to turn our attention to forbidden foods. Dun, dun, dun. Avoiding certain foods isn't about being overly cautious. It's about respecting a ferret's unique biology. Feeding inappropriate items, even in small amounts, can cause serious harm by working against their evolutionary design, as we talked about earlier. Now, the core issue is related to carbohydrates in these forbidden foods and ferret digestion, which we discussed earlier. As we said earlier also, ferrets are obligate carnivores with short, simple digestive tracts. They lack the digestive enzymes and gut flora to process complex carbohydrates like grains, corn, rice, and sugar. These pass through undigested, which causes GI distress, blockages, and inflammation. Sugar also stresses the pancreas, triggering insulin spikes because the ferret pancreas is not designed to handle sudden influxes of sugar. Over time, this can lead to insulinoma, which is a common and aggressive cancer in ferrets. So let's take a look at a list here of dangerous, quote unquote, human foods. First on the list, sugary cereals and candy. These are high in sugar and additives and linked to insulinoma and digestive upset. Also, peanut butter, because sometimes these also contain sorbitol, which is toxic, plant-based fats, which are unsuitable, and a sticky texture that can pose a choking risk. We also have on the list grains, corn, and rice, because these are indigestible fillers that cause malabsorption and chronic inflammation. Also, fruits and vegetables. Natural sugars in these strain the pancreas. Fiber can actually cause life-threatening blockages. On here, we also have dairy, and like some of their human counterparts, ferrets are lactose intolerant, so consuming dairy can cause diarrhea and dehydration. Also on the list is chocolate, because it contains something called theobromine, which is toxic and potentially fatal. And there are various long-term risks of feeding these foods, such as chronic intestinal issues, such as inflammatory bowel disease and chronic enteritis. And these come from undigested carbohydrates and plant matter. And then cancer. The link between high carbohydrate diets and insulinoma is well documented in veterinary medicine. By repeatedly stressing the pancreas, you significantly increase the likelihood of your ferret developing this very common and aggressive cancer. So the bottom line is, this isn't a flexible guideline. It's a strict rule for protecting your ferret's health. Their bodies aren't built like ours or our dogs. Feeding them appropriately means honoring millions of years of carnivorous evolution and preventing avoidable suffering. And here's a fun fact. Can you believe that back in the 1980s, we actually fed raisins as a treat? They're actually toxic for ferrets. So let's talk about kibble options. Feeding a ferret a mix of several high-quality kibbles, as we mentioned earlier, is a recommended practice among experienced owners and veterinarians for two primary reasons: safety and nutritional completeness. This strategy is a proactive measure against the unpredictable nature of the pet food industry and the potential for a ferret to become a picky eater. We call this the safety net of variety. Now, the pet food industry, while heavily regulated, is not immune to unforeseen problems. And certainly many of us remember times in the past where there have been recalls on pet food. It's actually quite common. Recalls and product cancellations are a very real and present danger. A recall can happen for a variety of reasons, including bacterial contamination. Contaminants like Salmonella and E. coli, which are bacteria, can infect a food manufacturing plant, leading to a recall of many product lots. Also, misformulation or nutrient imbalance. Mistakes in the manufacturing process can lead to food with dangerous levels of a certain vitamin or mineral, as seen in past recalls related to vitamin D toxicity. Also, contamination with foreign objects. Small pieces of metal or plastic can accidentally get into food during the manufacturing process. So if your ferret eats only a single brand of kibble and that brand is suddenly recalled, you have a critical problem. Not only is the food you have potentially dangerous, but now you have to find a new food for a ferret that has imprinted on a single flavor. This can lead to a refusal to eat, putting your ferret at risk of life-threatening health issues. By feeding a mix of 2 or 3 kibbles, you mitigate this risk. If one brand is recalled, you can simply stop feeding it and increase the proportion of the other brands. This prevents that catastrophic disruption to your ferret's diet and provides time to find a new brand to add to the rotation. Now, staying informed about recalls is a key part of this strategy. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, provides a valuable service by issuing safety alerts and notifications on their website. You can and should subscribe to these alerts to stay up to date on any product withdrawals that might affect your pet's food. So how do we choose a quality kibble? Variety matters, but nutritional quality is critical. As obligate carnivores, ferrets need diets that mimic their natural prey, ideally with meat content up to 90%. So when you're evaluating kibble, first you want to check the ingredient list. Items are listed by weight. Also, look for animal-based proteins, such as chicken meal and lamb meal in the top spots. Also, avoid grains, pea protein, which we'll talk in detail about in upcoming slides, and fillers. They are hard to digest and offer little value. The closer the kibble is to pure meat, the better it supports digestion, coat health, and long-term wellness. So continuing the kibble discussion, let's talk about choosing the right kibble and focusing on ingredients and not clever marketing. Now, the kibble debate can be overwhelming, but it boils down to one principle: ingredient quality and the specificity. Ignore the marketing, read the label. So ingredient lists, as we mentioned, are ordered by weight. Look for named animal proteins like chicken meal, lamb, or duck. These provide digestible, high-quality nutrition and reflect consistency in manufacturing. Chicken meal and chicken fat particularly are excellent sources of protein and energy for ferret. Chicken meal, for example, is a concentrated protein source from chicken meat and skin, and is often a higher quality protein source than even fresh chicken, which contains a lot of water. Similarly, chicken fat is a high quality, easily digestible fat source that ferrets can utilize for energy. Now, regarding specificity, be sure to avoid kibbles with vague ingredients. It's kind of like they tell us humans when we evaluate food labels. If there's anything on there you can't pronounce, it's probably not a good idea to include it in your diet. Now, terms like meat meal, animal fat, or poultry byproducts are red flags. They often include low quality or untraceable sources, leading to nutritional inconsistency, higher allergy risks, and poor digestibility. So for guidance and kibble choice, ferret-specific food charts are a good tool to help simplify choices because they break down ingredients clearly, they show protein, fat, and fiber percentages, and they rank brands by nutritional quality. And so on the next slide, you'll see where you can get access to an actual ferret kibble chart that does these things. So in summary, you want to choose a kibble with clearly named animal proteins and use trusted food charts or your veterinarian to guide you. It's the best way to ensure your ferret gets a consistent, biologically appropriate diet. So here you can see we've got some live links to our some sites that offer these charts. And you can see here where they've got different sections that explain, the various features of the chart. So if we click on one of these, you can see where it takes us to a kibble chart over here. And you can take a look at this down here. Ferret formulated kibbles in green. And here we've got, for example, Wysong, Ferret Epigen 90 digestive support. Here's another one, Young Again, Pretty Pets, Oxbow, Missouri, Totally Ferret, and so on and so forth. So you get a good idea of what these look like. All right, so moving along, we're going to talk about pea protein now. Now, there's a lot of information on this slide, and we promised you we'd talk about pea protein, but we provided it to reinforce the risks and dangers of pea protein. Now, pea protein is a growing concern in ferret diets. While it boosts the protein percentage on labels, it's a cheap plant-based substitute that undermines ferret health. Now, you might be asking why it's used if it's so dangerous. Well, because it's cost saving, comes down to money. It's cheaper than animal protein. Animal protein is expensive. Sourcing high quality meat, poultry, or fish meal drives up production costs. Pea protein, that plant based alternative, is far cheaper to produce. By using it, manufacturers can advertise a high protein percentage on the bag while keeping their costs down. Also, for pellet binding, pea protein, along with other plant-based ingredients, acts as a binding agent, helping to hold the kibble pellets together during the manufacturing process. This is a crucial function because a purely animal-based mix would not form a stable pellet and would just crumble. So what are the specific health risks associated with pea protein? Well, the biggest one is a condition called cysteine urolithiasis. Say that 5 times fast. Also known as bladder stones. Pea protein is linked to painful bladder stones, especially in neutered males. And this is because their long and narrow urethras, which is the tube that exits the bladder to the outside, makes males more vulnerable to blockages. Now, how are these stones linked to pea protein? Well, because of a metabolic mismatch, basically. Cysteine is an amino acid. While it is naturally present in animal proteins, the high levels in different metabolic pathways associated with pea protein seems to exacerbate a pre-existing genetic or metabolic predisposition to this condition in some ferrets. Also, a concern is a urine pH shift. Diets high in plant-based proteins, like pea protein, can raise the pH of a ferret's urine, making it more alkaline. So now we're putting on our high school chemistry hat here. Cysteine crystals are less soluble in alkaline urine and are more likely to clump together and form stones. A proper animal-based diet naturally results in a more acidic urine pH, which is acidic is the opposite of alkaline, which helps prevent the formation of these stones. So the issue of pea protein highlights the critical importance of reading those food labels. A kibble labeled with a high protein content means little if that protein comes from peas. Always, always, always check for named animal proteins, such as chicken meal, lamb, and some of the others we mentioned, as primary ingredients. So the moral of the story is that pea protein may look good on paper, but it's biologically inappropriate for ferrets. It may be tempting to choose the cheaper food, but you are likely to pay much more than what you saved later in large vet bills and having to witness your ferret's pain and suffering. Choosing kibbles with specific animal-based proteins helps prevent serious health issues and supports long-term wellness. So the directive to avoid pea protein in ferret food is an absolute necessity, as I mentioned, not an optional guideline. As highlighted here, this single ingredient, a seemingly innocuous plant-based additive, has been linked to severe and painful health issues in ferrets, as discussed previously, and it's a perfect example of why vigilance is the most important trait for a ferret owner. And part of this vigilance is always checking the label, no matter how long you've been using a food. The reason for this is that brands do change formulas without warning. A once safe kibble can quietly add pea protein. Always review ingredients before each purchase to avoid accidental harm. Now, it goes without saying to not be tempted into that false sense of cost savings. We'll reiterate, pea protein containing kibble may cost less, but treating urolithiasis can cost thousands in vet bills and cause immense suffering with painful blockages and the need for emergency surgery to address those, not to mention the risk of death if these are untreated. So in summary, pea protein is a hidden danger. Vigilance in label reading protects your ferret's health and spares you the emotional and financial distress. The cheapest food is rarely the safest. And some ferret owners we know continue to debate this issue in internet groups, but the evidence from the past several years is telling. All right, so you need to switch kibbles. After reading all of this information and mulling it over, it's like, oh, gotta switch kibbles. Well, changing a ferret's diet, even for the better, is a process that requires patience and a gradual approach. The practice of slowly transitioning from an old food to a new one is not just a suggestion, it's a vital step to prevent serious gastrointestinal upset and ensure a successful switch. Let's talk a little bit about the science behind a gradual transition, starting with the role of the gut or intestinal microbiome. Now, ferrets, like humans, have a gut microbiome throughout both intestines, which is a complex community of billions of bacteria that help digest food, absorb nutrients, and regulate immune responses. These helpful microbes adapt to the specific protein, fat, and additives in a ferret's regular diet. Sudden changes to the diet introduce unfamiliar ingredients to this microbiome, disrupting its balance. And this imbalance can impair digestion and trigger inflammation, leading to GI distress and reduced nutrient absorption. Therefore, a gradual transition allows the microbiome to recalibrate, minimizing stress and promoting smoother digestion. Also, ferrets produce digestive enzymes tailored to their current food. Switching protein or fat sources too quickly can overwhelm their system before it adjusts their enzyme production, another reason for a slow transition. Now, as we discussed earlier, ferrets often imprint on familiar foods, especially after 1 year of age, which can be problematic in times of illness or the need to change kibbles. Sudden changes may lead to a stubborn refusal to eat, risking hypoglycemia due to their fast metabolism and their need to eat frequently. By mixing the new food in gradually, you are linking the new, unfamiliar taste and texture with the old, comforting food they already know and trust. This helps them make a positive association with the new kibble and slowly accept it as part of their diet. And a sample 7-day transition schedule, could look like days 1 and 2, you could do 75% of the old and maybe 25% of the new. Then days 3 to 4, 50% of the old, 50% of the new. Days 5 and 6, maybe 25% old, 75% new, and then maybe on day 7, 100% new food. And that's just a suggestion. It may take longer, depending on how your ferret tolerates it. And always pay attention to the things that are happening along the way to make sure they're not experiencing GI distress. So let's talk about some kibble transition techniques. And this is where you might have to get a little bit creative because, as we mentioned previously, a gradual shift from the old kibble to the new one is essential to avoid digestive upset and behavioral resistance. Here are some effective low-stress methods to ease the transition. You could do a side bowl introduction, placing a small bowl of the new kibble next to their usual food. Some ferrets will explore it independently, no pressure, just curiosity. You could also try hand feeding. Offer the new kibble as a treat during bonding time. This builds trust and positive associations with the new taste. You might try flavor blending, where you mix old and new kibble in a sealed bag or a container and refrigerate it for 24 to 72 hours. This helps the flavors and the scents meld, making the new food more familiar. Also, my personal favorite, play-based discovery. Toss a few pieces of the new kibble into a paper bag and just leave it in their play area. Ferrets love forbidden finds, so this turns the new food into a game. You could also try a warm water mix, meaning adding the warm water to a blend of old and new kibble to soften and unify the flavors. This can help picky eaters accept the change a little better. Also, try scent masking. Grind some old kibble in an coffee grinder and sprinkle it over the new. Familiar scent cues can encourage hesitant ferrets to try unfamiliar textures. Now, these techniques support both the microbiome's gradual adaptation and the ferret's behavioral comfort. A slow, multisensory approach increases acceptance and reduces stress, making the transition smoother for everyone. All right, now we're going to switch our focus from kibble to raw diets. Now, we're going to start with the whole prey diet, and there's a lot of information here, but a whole prey diet is the most biologically accurate raw diet for ferrets, closely mirroring what wild polecats eat. It includes frozen or live prey such as mice, rats, rabbits, quail, chicks, frogs, crawfish, and even insects like crickets. However, there are numerous pros and cons to consider, and they are explained here. So, The benefits, the pros, it's complete nutrition. Each prey item contains muscle, organs, bones, and indigestibles, naturally balanced without supplementation. It also promotes dental health. Fur and bones help clean teeth and reduce tartar. Also, significant digestive support. Indigestibles act like fiber, aiding gut motility and stool formation. And it encourages natural behaviors and mental stimulation because it's their instinctual feeding method. So the cons or the limitations, biggest one could be the cost. Whole prey is often the most expensive raw option unless it's self-sourced. Most owners use it as a supplement rather than as a full diet for this reason. And also access. Not all prey types are readily available, and storage requires freezer space and handling precautions. And that's because there's danger of, parasitic infections and bacterial transmissions and some of those. And of course, the source matters. Prey from reputable suppliers is generally safe when we talk about those parasitic and bacterial concerns. Risks of parasites or bacteria are low but present even if they're from reputable suppliers. Wild-caught prey is unsafe. It may carry parasites, diseases, or toxins like rodenticides. And we even saw that in the black-footed ferret population with the prairie dog that had sylvatic plague, and then when the ranchers were poisoning them. So that's also an interesting study in raw diets and what could happen with wild prey. Also, ferret instincts. Ferrets often avoid eating intestines, likely to reduce their pathogen exposure. Occasionally, they consume them, possibly for roughage or trace minerals. Now, whole prey offers unmatched nutritional and behavioral benefits, but comes with a cost and sourcing challenges. When used wisely and safely, it's a powerful tool in a balanced raw feeding strategy. Now we're going to talk about the Frankenprey model of raw diets. Now, this model mimics whole prey nutrition by combining grocery-grade meats, bones, and organs in specific ratios of muscle meat, bones, and organs. It's a flexible, accessible raw feeding method for owners who prefer not to use whole animals. As with the other diet, the benefits are it's customizable. It allows control over the ingredients and sourcing. There are dental health benefits because chewing raw bones supports oral hygiene. It's also a little more cost effective. It's often cheaper than whole prey or commercial raw. There are some challenges, however. Nutrient balance is one of them. It requires careful planning to meet dietary needs, especially taurine, calcium, and fat-soluble vitamins. There's also a risk of pathogens. Handling raw meat increases exposure to bacteria. Safe food prep is essential when using this method. And there's also somewhat of a margin for error. Mistakes in ratios or missing organ types can lead to deficiencies over time. Whoops, we went a little too far here. Sorry about that. So when we talk about the different ways to feed this diet, there are a couple of considerations in the feeding style that you might choose. The first is meal balanced. Each serving contains the full muscle, meat, bone, and organ ratio, which is ideal if you're using a grinder. Or you can do the week balanced, where ratios are met across multiple meals, which is kind of your standard prey model approach. So due to its complexity, mentorship is highly recommended when using this model. And there's a link there for the Holistic Ferret Forum, which offers guides, sample menus, and experienced mentors to help you build a safe, balanced Frankenprey plan. This plan offers flexibility and enrichment, but does demand precision. With proper guidance, it can be a biologically appropriate and rewarding feeding method. So let's take a look at someone who actually did get some guidance from the Holistic Ferret, and we'll take a look inside a raw feeder's fridge. We thought this would be kind of interesting to take a look at this, and this is from Emmy Flynn, and she was kind enough to share her routines. Now, she cares for 22 ferrets and feeds raw 3 days a week alongside a kibble mix, especially for shelter rescues. Now, her raw meals, as you can see here, are pretty well balanced, as she says, but she does keep kibble in rotation for added nutritional security. She includes frozen prey a few times weekly, though rising costs have been limiting her use of it. Most of her meat comes from grocery stores, such as chicken, turkey, seasonal duck, And a local processor offers affordable cuts like pork hearts, kidneys, and tongue, and ground beef hearts at $2 a pound. And she uses that in her soupy mix. So initially she used a cleaver. She switched to a meat cutter for efficiency, but she preps large batches, and although that is very time consuming for her. And she does credit the Holistic Ferret Forum for the Frankenprey guidance, noting, I asked a lot of questions and got helpful answers. Balanced nutrition is absolutely essential if you're going to raw feed. So thank you, Emmy, for sharing that with us. So let's turn our attention briefly to commercial raw diets. Feeding ferrets a commercial raw diet is a popular option due to its convenience, safety, and nutritional completeness. These products are typically available in pet stores and offer a clean, low-prep alternative to DIY raw feeding. So what do you look for with these diets? You want to choose products that are at least 95% meat, bone, and organ, with no more than 5% vegetables or fruit. As noted previously, ferrets are obligate carnivores, and you now know that plant matter offers no nutritional value and may disrupt their digestion. So commercial raw comes in three basic formulas. We've got frozen, which is the most cost-effective and widely varied, ideal for bulk feeding. We have freeze-dried, which is lightweight and shelf-stable. Moisture is removed there via a process called sublimation. And then there's dehydrated. These are dried at low heat, less than 108 degrees Fahrenheit, which retains the raw integrity. And this is despite common misconceptions about this process. So a word about safety and processing. Most brands use a process called high pressure pasteurization, HPP for short, to eliminate pathogens without cooking the food. This makes it safe for handling and suitable for immune-compromised pets, and we'll talk a little bit more about this process on the next slide. So a few considerations when considering this particular diet. Not all brands are balanced. You still have to check for complete nutrient profiles. Also, as with everything else, considerations for dental health. Ground bones offer no chewing benefit, so supplemental dental care practices such as brushing are recommended. In summary, these diets offer a practical, biologically appropriate option for ferret owners, but be sure that you're looking at those labels, and dental support is also key to long-term success with this diet. So let's do a quick word about H5N1 and raw feeding. Now, HPP, high pressure pasteurization, has not been proven to eliminate H5N1, which is the bird flu. This virus is deadly to mustelids, including ferrets, and can be transmitted through infected raw meat or milk. Now, due to reduced public health monitoring, the current status and pandemic risk of H5N1 remains unclear, making vigilance in sourcing raw foods more important than ever. And a quick note about taurine. This is a critical nutrient of ferrets that they cannot synthesize themselves. And it supports digestion, heart health, muscle function, vision, and their central nervous system. And deficiencies in this can cause a lot of health issues like cardiomyopathy and retinal degeneration, which is an eye problem resulting in blindness. While exact requirements aren't well studied, taurine is water soluble, so excesses of it are rarely harmful. To supplement, you could feed heart meat, especially chicken or beef, and beef tongue, or you could use taurine powder if needed for added support. So let's talk a little bit about water. Now, the topic of water provision also seems to cause a lot of controversy, but the gold standard is a dual approach for ferret hydration. Ferrets should always have access to both a water bottle and a bowl. This two-pronged setup ensures hydration even if one source is compromised, because we know how our woozles like to snorkel and bath the water out of the bowl. Let's talk about how to use both effectively. Now, a bottle acts as a backup if the bowl is spilled or contaminated. However, it has to be cleaned frequently to prevent bacterial buildup, and we're all probably familiar with the scum that comes on the bottom of the bowl that we have to clean. Be sure to frequently check for proper flow. Some bottles clog or leak unpredictably. Also, on the other hand, bowls offer a natural drinking posture and encourages better hydration. You want to use a heavy tip-resistant dish to prevent flipping it over, because we know how woozles love to do that. Also, choose a shallow bowl to avoid drowning risks, particularly for kits, and be sure to clean and refill daily to maintain freshness. Now, we also know that ferrets are not the most graceful drinkers, and so we have to discuss spill management. And of course, we all know placing the bowl inside a high-sided tray like a cake pan, under the bed tub, or covered litter box base will catch splashes and snorkeling spills. This keeps the cage dry and reduces mess. A bottle provides reliability, while a bowl supports comfort and hydration, the best of both worlds. Together, they create a safe, effective hydration system tailored to ferret behavior. And then a word about treats. No discussion about nutrition would be complete without attention to treats. So let's talk about what a treat really means for ferrets. So for ferrets, a treat isn't about sugar, it's about flavor and connection. The real reward is the shared moment with their human. Offering a small, healthy food item during play or cuddle time strengthens your bond and reinforces trust. Now, you might be saying, but what about ferret-specific treats that are commercially available? Surely they would not be sold if they are bad. But let's discuss that. So what are the problems with commercial treats? Now, many of them are loaded with harmful ingredients that we talked about earlier, such as sugars, grains and carbs, and dairy. And by now, you know that a lot of these are linked to things like insulinoma, and they create GI upset. And even if they're labeled for ferrets, a lot of them contain plant-based fillers. Treat them with the same scrutiny as kibble when you are reading those labels. So what are some safe species-appropriate treats? So it's best for our little obligate carnivores to stick to 100% meat-based options. Things like meat-based baby food like beechnut chicken, plain cooked meats like chicken or turkey, and of course with no seasoning, or freeze-dried meat treats like single ingredient, like 100% chicken treats. Table scraps are not acceptable treats and are risky because human food often contains things that are toxic for ferrets, such as, or things they shouldn't have. Salt, spices, garlic, and onion, they're toxic. Cured meats are high in preservatives, which are very hard on their kidneys, and cooked bones are a splinter risk, which can cause internal injury. So the best treat is a small, clean meat item shared during a loving moment. Skip the commercial junk. Your ferret's health and happiness depends on it. All right, talk a little bit about supplements such as oils. Now, here we have Simon, the trained ferret, getting some oil, one of our favorite guys over here. And he's going to tell you the most important rule for supplementing a ferret's diet with oils is moderation. Now, salmon and other fish oils are rich in omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids, supporting skin and coat health, joint, heart, and immune function, and brain and eye development. However, it's calorie dense and not a food source. A pea-sized dab once or twice daily is plenty. Overuse can lead to obesity and disrupt core nutrition from kibble or raw meat. Now, oils are more than just a supplement. They are a versatile tool with several practical uses. They can assist with medication delivery because they mask the taste and reduce the stress of giving the medicine. Also, you can use them during grooming. It keeps ferrets distracted during their nail trims or their ear cleaning. Also, as a training aid, acts as a high-value positive reinforcement. Now, use sparingly. Oils boost health, simplifies care routines, and deepens your bond with your ferret. And now we have a little video.
Okay, I'm going to narrate this because
Okay.
the sound isn't working. It's
Okay.
a little glitchy, but basically, this is Simon. I have trained him to recall or come to me whenever I have salmon oils with the high value treat that I use. So these are just examples of him coming to me for salmon oil. I only give him a drop or two, and he is just thrilled every single time. But a recall is very important, and so salmon oil is just a great way and a great assistant to training, and it's healthy for them as long as you do it in moderation. So that, yeah, this last one he didn't do so great on. There was too many smells at the vet's office, but we'll give him a pass. He tried. There was like
Good
a
job,
rabbit.
Simon.
There was a
Yay.
rabbit. So, but he eventually comes. So there you go.
Yay, Simon. And thank you so much, Courtney, for
You're
sharing your
welcome.
Simon with us. He's really awesome.
You're welcome.
Hey,
All
Dawn,
right. Yes.
it's Bonnie. Just wanted
Yes,
to let you
Bonnie.
know that that we are running long. So we are going to extend this presentation to probably 8:10 p.m. to make sure that we allow for additional time for the Q&A. So just party on, and I'm going to unmute myself. I just wanted to say that we are going to extend the time.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And we have actually, come to the end of my part of the presentation. And before we get into the QA, we wanted to do a couple of things, introduce you to the team who developed and are supporting the webinar, and to make sure you know how to join the AFA if you are not already a member. Here we have Robin, Dawn, and Courtney. There's Robin, our education director. This is me, the director of legal and legislative. And here's Courtney, Simon's mama. And then here on the next slide, we have Skyla, who is our health affairs director. We have Claudia, who helps us with nutrition. And then we have Bonnie, who's the director of Washington Metro Area Ferret Outreach and our fearless vice president of the AFA. So thanks to them, for developing this great content that we hope that everybody enjoyed. And on this slide, which is where we actually have a new website coming soon, and we would invite you to become a member if you haven't already. Visit us at ferret.org to be able to do so, and be on the lookout for that new website. And now for the Q&A.
Okay, so I am looking at the questions we have here. I'm just going to start reading them from the bottom here. All right, so the first question is what to do in Australia as we have very poor options in kibble, usually only ferret origins from Vetifarm.
Yeah. So does anybody from our expert panel have any advice for the Australians? Skyla?
Read the label. Yeah, I mean, look at the ingredients list, look at the guaranteed analysis, which is what they call the part where it has the breakdown of protein percent, fat percent, fiber. What we used to do back in the day before we had an assortment of ferret foods to choose from was kitten chow. A lot of people used IAM's kitten chow. And the reason for that is because kitten chow has a higher protein content than cat chow. So if you're really hard up for options, you could try looking at some of the better brands of kitten chow. There's taurine in cat food, so that's good. I actually feed in my kibble mix. The number one kibble that I use is God, what's the whole name of it? It's Instinct Ultimate Protein, and it's a cat food, but it has a very high protein content. The carbohydrate substrate is tapioca, which is pretty neutral. So far, it still doesn't have peas in it. So it just, that's what I would do is I would look at the labels and look at the guaranteed analysis, make sure that you try to find something that's at least 35 to 40% protein or even higher. And try to have meat products in the first 5 ingredients. So that's what I would do.
Thanks, Skyla.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
At all?
No, I couldn't hear what that last bit was, but I can go forward with the next question if you guys are ready.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, the next one is, does nutrition change as ferrets age? If yes, what should be adjusted?
Well, from adult to senior, I don't think it changes that much, but definitely kits need more pretty much, I mean, I have a youngster, he's now 6 months old, and I feel like every time I turn around, his food bowl is empty. Like every time I turn around, he's just like a vacuum cleaner. And I introduced him to raw, and now he's like all about gizzards. So theoretically, which is why kitten chow, I mean, it's true of all our pets. Kittens need a higher amount of protein than cats, and all those, nutritional building blocks, right? So that's why kitten chow has a higher protein content than cat chow. I have never seen a ferret kit specific diet, but I've never made adjustments. I would say that the main concern about nutritional changes would be related to if the animal had chronic health, some kind of health condition that you needed to monitor their diet.
Hey, Claudia, do you have any thoughts on when ferrets become seniors? Is there any recommended changes in their balance of nutrients or proteins?
Not that I'm aware of. With our dogs and cats that get kidney issues, we look for a lower protein and possibly and sodium content. But the ferrets have such a high protein and fat requirement. And in all my years in geriatrics, I don't change their diet other than supplementation when they need it with soup, AD, carnivore. All those things are high in protein anyway. But so I don't change
Great.
what I do.
Cool. Perfect. Thank you.
All right. The next question is, how do you know how much freeze-dried raw to feed your young ferrets and adults?
I would say, unless they have a weight problem, as much as they want. Honestly, I've never had a ferret that was just always at the bowl and got really, really fat. They're carnivores, they're very active, they have a fast metabolism. So, and they eat less in the summer, they lose weight seasonally. So for the summer, now is the time with the days getting shorter. They know winter is coming, so everybody's appetite has revved up. I let them decide how much they're going to eat. Claudia, did you have a
I just use the freeze dried as a treat, so
Okay.
I'm not feeding that as the sole food. So mine get a lot of treats of freeze dried Stellas.
Okay. The next question is, how to get ferrets eating soupies? Are there tips for that?
I think did we kind of talk about that? I think, Dawn, you talked about that earlier in the presentation.
We did.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of things you can do. Grind up. I have an old coffee bean grinder that I use to grind up kibble in. You can take some of their kibble and grind that up and mix it in whatever you're using for soup. You can use, add a little salmon oil if they like salmon oil to the soup. But if they're super picky like that, try to take something that they're familiar with and they like, and you can add that to the soup and then kind of gradually, if you want to take that out. Like, I don't really feed soup. I kind of jazz up frozen raw. But when I was starting to get my guys interested in that, the way I did that was I would grind up, they like the Stella and Chewy's dehydrated. So I would grind up some of that in the coffee grinder and grind up a little bit of their kibble and mix that in with the frozen raw. And so there was something familiar in there. And that's how I start them off with it. I also, Gerber's baby food is the favorite in my house. It does have cornstarch in it, so people may have some concerns about that. But I have a guy with insulinoma right now, and he just adores baby food. So to give him his meds, I'll give it to him with soup that's got extra chicken baby food in it, because to him that is just, he would explode if I let him near that. So you just have to like find things they really like, and it's kind of like when you do the transitioning, and you gradually increase the amount of the novel diet in with the familiar. And a lot of it is just hit or miss and experimenting.
Is it okay if I add something? Like, so if a ferret isn't used to soup or whatever, no matter what it is, their regular ferret food with AD or baby food, I will put it on my finger, or actually I'm real fanatical about only using a 1 cc syringe. I never use anything bigger than that. And I'll just, put a little bit in their mouth, and gradually, hopefully, at least most of them will begin to like it, and so that you actually can just put the bowl down at some point. But to start them on anything new like that, I use a 1 cc syringe very
Thank you.
slowly.
That's a really, really good point. Sometimes, you have to just kind of like get some on your finger and poke it in their mouth. And the typical, the first time they might be like, I'm being poisoned. Oh my God. But, you just kind of give them another little taste. And then eventually it's like that signal works its way into their little pea brain, and they're like, oh, wait a minute, this isn't poison. This is actually delicious. But yeah, finger feeding, I think, I'm really glad you brought that up, Claudia, because yeah, I think that sometimes you have to be a little bit more proactive. Careful. I mean, never force food into their mouth. But if you like put it on their lips, or just, on their teeth, and make them lick it off. What else?
Okay. So the next question is, why are ferrets unable to digest grains while cats, who are also obligate carnivores, need it, or else they are very at risk to develop dilated cardiomyopathy? On what article are those information based off of?
I have never heard that cats need grains. Cats are also obligate carnivores, and cats require taurine to prevent cardiomyopathy. So I just have to say, I'm not sure what your source is. There was some concern when the high protein, low grain kibbles first started coming out for dogs. There was some concern that those high protein diets were linked with an increase in heart disease in dogs. And I'm not really sure what the ultimate conclusion on that was, but I don't think the rationale is that grains are necessary. Yeah, I see somebody commented in the chat that there's a link between heart disease in dogs and the diet. But yeah, grains, as far as like ferrets go, with wild obligate carnivores, there's this whole discussion, like when you're feeding whole prey, that if they do need any amount of carbohydrate, they might be getting it from the GI tract of the prey that they're eating. Although really animals in the wild tend to not eat the GI tract because it's a source of pathogens. So as far as I know, ferrets do not need grains. And in fact, as Dawn mentioned, there's a whole line of thinking that diets that are higher in carbohydrates and grains may contribute to insulinoma. So that's what I know.
Okay, and the next question is, what study or article directly showed that insulinoma is directly linked to carbohydrate consumption? Is that link just a suspicion, or was it proven?
It has not been proven. It hasn't been proven. And I have to say, I feed a high protein diet. I've had ferrets for actually at this point since the late 1990s. Currently, I offer kibble. It's a very high protein kibble. Primarily during the day, they get dehydrated or freeze dried. I also do raw. I still see a lot of insulinoma. So the jury is still out about that. It's probably multifactorial where
I
you've
think you're
got,
absolutely right. I think it's multifactor. You're right. Sadly, about 80% of our, well, at least I always say pet store ferrets, but at least 80% of our ferrets seem to get, both adrenal disease and insulinoma. The two are not related, but certainly diet must play some part in that, sadly. But I think there's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of factors, but certainly diet, nutrition plays a huge part in all aspects. But I feel it's important in insulinoma for sure.
yeah, I mean, like, I definitely wouldn't say that just because there isn't a paper proving it, that
Right.
doesn't mean you can go out and, feed bandit treats and, Cheerios as much as you want. Absolutely not. But it's still an area of, and the problem is with ferrets, like, there's not a ton of research because cats and dogs are the most popular animals, and that's where the money is. So it's really mostly like the vets and the veterinary people who care about ferrets, who are kind of looking at what they've seen and drawing conclusions from that.
Okay, and I have, does HPP neutralize bacteria toxins such as Clostridium or E. coli/Salmonella?
I'm not sure technically. I think probably, I don't know about Clostridia. I think Salmonella and E. coli. But, if you read the labels of all those foods that are processed by HPP, it says this is raw food. Observe all the safe handling precautions that you would if it were raw food. Each manufacturer, I think it's like a same general process. I would say if you have specific concerns about a specific pathogen, you should maybe look at their website and see what they say or contact them. But offhand, it's generally, it gets rid of a lot of those things, but it doesn't with bird flu. They will say that they believe it does because they're just extrapolating information that they've learned from testing the process against other viruses. Have they tested it on H5N1? No, they haven't.
All right, and last one for now. What is your opinion with the new formula of Missouri?
I can't speak to that. I don't feed Missouri. Does anyone else?
I was, and I'm sure a lot of us here were a part of the different food trial where we would get the different bags of Missouri. I guess it's probably been within the last year. Uh, I had one old guy that just stopped eating other stuff and would only eat that. And I was like, okay, that's fine. But as a whole, the different bags that I received, most of mine didn't want it. I had a question. I don't know if anybody else can answer this. The blood meal that was in it, I wasn't sure what that was. And some of the bags I didn't really, I personally didn't care for the way it smelled. I'm not a ferret, but that is just my take on it.
And I just want to throw in there, they said, I have seen lots of, debate over the new Missouri. I've seen people say their ferrets can't stand it, won't touch it. But, I don't think we can comment on the actual nutrition of the new Missouris. I haven't read over the label, and I haven't gotten the new Missouri. But if your ferrets don't eat it because they don't like it, there's plenty of other options. I would just pass on it and not try to figure it out. So Courtney, I think we need to wrap up, even though there is a lot more in the discussion area, the Q&A, and we can address these later on. In a post or something, there's a lot of good commentary. I see things by Tracy and Kathy that we can address separately in a post or chat. But do you want to wrap up the Q&A with anything else?
Nope, I think we're all set.
All right, so Dawn, should we wrap up the thing? And let me just say, thank you so much, Dawn, as our chief presenter, and all our experts on the panel. This is Bonnie, the vice president, and I just want to say I'm really proud of the team here for pulling together this great informative webinar, and I'm looking forward to future webinars. And Dawn, take it away to wrap it up.
Yes, I want to echo Bonnie's thanks. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining and bearing with us. We so much work and love and blood, sweat, and tears went into preparing hours and hours to bring you the best content. Thank you to Kathy Johnson of the AEMV for joining us. I'm sure in the future you'll be hearing more from her as well, because we're hoping to do some exciting things with the AEMV, the Association of Exotic Mammal Veterinarians. And also stay tuned to our AFA website and our Facebook page for our upcoming webinars and events. We have some really great content that we want to present on budgeting for ferrets. So how much it actually costs to have ferrets and how you should budget and insurance and all those things, as well as a lot of other really top of mind topics. So we hope that you'll stay tuned for the future. And again, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.